Galactic Council voted to partition humanity. The translator's cold whisper silenced them. The cold seeped through the soul of senior translator Alara Ven's left boot, a hairline crack she'd noticed 11 days ago, ignored, and now regretted as the polished obsidian floor of the Viridian amphitheater drank warmth from her bones. Above her, 847 empty seats rose in concentric tiers, each designed for species twice humanity's average height. The seats were carved from the same obsidian as the floor. They had never been full, not once in 800 years. The visitor's podium where Alara stood had been lowered 1.2 meters below the main floor, a deliberate humiliation. The Tharn had designed it that way 400 years ago for a species they later erased. Now it was humanity's turn. Pale stone pillars, each 40 meters tall, cast long shadows across the circular chamber. Light from 3 small suns projected, not real, filtered through a ceiling that displayed a slow-moving holographic map of the Orion Arm. Earth was already highlighted in crimson. The map had updated 3 hours ago. Someone had pressed a button. Someone had chosen that color. High Arbitrator Vexil of the Tharn Dominion rose from the central dais. His 3 vocal sacs pulsed amber as he spoke to the assembled representatives of 214 species, plus 8.3 billion watching via live relay across 17 sectors, plus the 12 species who hadn't been invited to co-sponsor but were watching anyway. The species designated, humanity, has, in 347 standard cycles of observation, demonstrated 1,892 violations of Galactic Stability Protocol 7. Their expansion rate exceeds allowable limits by 419%. Their military readiness, while primitive, shows unpredictable escalation patterns. Effective immediately, the Council votes on Partition Measure 9042, the division of all human-inhabited worlds, the redistribution of their 14 colonies to responsible council members, the relocation of 11.2 billion humans to designated reservation zone Z47. The vote was preordained. 189 species had already signed the co-sponsorship. Humans had been given no defense, no advocate, no right to appeal, no warning, no declaration, no mercy. Alara placed both palms flat on the cold podium. The obsidian was so smooth her skin stuck slightly. She did not raise her voice. She did not beg. She pressed the small brass button that connected her microphone to the translation array, a device she had personally recalibrated 74 nights ago, in the dark, while her team slept. Then she waited. The translation array hummed, a low frequency that only 12 species in the chamber could hear. Alara was one of them. She had burned her own hearing calibrating it. High Arbitrator Vexil's secondary eyelid flicked toward her. The human translator may leave. This is a vote, not a hearing. Alara tilted her head 7 degrees, a gesture of polite confusion she had practiced for 3 years in a mirror. The mirror was cracked now. It had been on Colony 3. I'm not speaking to you, Arbitrator. I'm speaking to the 11 species in this chamber who haven't signed your measure, the ones you didn't invite to co-sponsor. Silence, someone laughed, a short, wet sound from the Kelvani delegation. Kelvani lungs were designed for methane atmospheres. Their laugh sounded like drowning. There are no such species, Vexil said. Alara smiled. It was small. It held no warmth. She had learned that smile from watching Tharn diplomats close deals that killed human children. There are 12, actually, and they just received my translation of what your reservation zone actually means. Would you have stood there, knowing what they'd done, knowing they'd already voted? She didn't run, stay close. 37 years earlier, the first Tharn war vessel entered Sol system on a Tuesday. Alara was 19 years old, studying linguistics at a university that no longer existed. The university's name had been University of Cape Town. She had been learning ancient Greek. She never finished the semester. By Friday, her planet had been designated Observation Zone 7. For 37 years, humanity had not been building warships. They had been building dossiers. Every treaty violation, every observer who landed on human soil and left with biological samples, Every child taken from Colony 3's medical bay in 2189, every name, every death, every lie. The dossier was 11,437 pages long. Ilara had read it 3 times, once for information, once for names, once to memorize which names she would read aloud when the moment came. Her team called it Operation Long Reckoning. All 6 of them sat in a secondary relay station 4.3 light-years away. The station was a converted cargo hauler. The walls still smelled of the animals they used to transport. The toilets hadn't worked right in 11 years. Dr. Aris Thorne, scientist, linguist, he had cracked the Tharn's private legislative codex 11 years ago, hadn't slept more than 4 hours since. His eyes had a permanent red ring around the iris. He drank coffee so black it looked like crude oil. The Tharn use a nested clause structure, Aris had told her once. Each sentence contains 3 to 7 subordinate clauses. The actual meaning is in clause 4. Everything else is ornament. You have to ignore the ornament. He had taught her how. It took 9 months. Commander Sana Yoon, tactical, former JAG officer. She had mapped every procedural vulnerability in the Council Charter, on napkins mostly. Her handwriting was tiny, unreadable to anyone but her. She kept the napkins in a steel box that had once held Tharn military rations. The charter was written by species who trusted each other, Sana said. That's its weakness. They didn't imagine someone reading it who didn't trust them. Marcus Webb, Intel, librarian. He had memorized 34,000 pages of council precedent, recited Section 19 from memory while eating cold noodles. His apartment had no furniture except stacks of printouts. He slept on the floor. There's a case from 600 years ago, Marcus said once. 2 species fighting over a moon. One of them invoked Section 19. The hearing took 14 years. The species who invoked it lost their homeworld during the hearing, but they won the procedural argument. He had smiled. It was not a happy smile. We can do that, lose everything but win the argument. Petra Vasquez, comms engineer. She built the backdoor translation array without a single component larger than her thumb. Hadn't spoken above a whisper in 6 years. Her vocal cords had been damaged by a Tharn sonic weapon during the Colony 3 evacuation. She typed instead, fast. Her fingers moved like insects. The array rewrites Tharn legislative language in real time, she typed. They can't see what I'm doing. Their encryption doesn't account for human pattern recognition. They think we're stupid. Jinho Park, combat unarmed, historian. He specialized in nonviolent collapse of oppressive regimes. Carried no weapon. Read poetry to calm down. His favorite poet was a woman who died 200 years ago. He knew 47 of her poems by heart. The best way to break an empire, Jinho said, is to make its laws public. Empires hide their rules. They want you to think the rules don't apply to you, but they do. You just have to read them. He had read them, all of them. And Ilara Venn, translator, leader. She had spent 9 years learning 214 species microexpressions, lies and tells. She could watch a Tharn diplomat speak for 30 seconds and know whether he was lying. The amber sacs, the secondary eyelid, the way their left hand curled when they were about to propose something they knew would kill. Before entering the chamber that morning, Ilara had drunk 1 cup of jasmine tea from her grandmother's chipped ceramic mug. The mug was stained brown along the inside. A hairline crack ran down the side, repaired poorly with epoxy years ago. It held exactly 1 cup. Her grandmother had bought the mug at a flea market in 1983. She had drunk tea from it every morning for 40 years. When she died, Ilara took it. She had brought it across 17 sectors, tucked into her coat. The tea was cold now. She drank it anyway. She had touched the photograph in her breast pocket. Her wife, Aisha, their 6-year-old twins, Myra and Kale, on a beach that no longer existed. The photograph was creased along the edges. Aisha's face was smudged from Ilara's thumb. Colony 3, now a Tharn military depot. The evacuation had taken 9 hours. Ilara had been in the translation array room. She had heard the alarm. She had run. By the time she reached the transport dock, the shuttles were gone. Aisha had sent her a message, 4 words. Take care of them. Alara hadn't taken care of them. She had been translating Tharn military codes while her family died. The mug sat empty in her coat pocket now, the photograph pressed against her heart. She had not cried, not in 37 years. The Tharn Dominion had spent 347 cycles observing humanity, filing violations like receipts. 1,892 of them, each one annotated, each one cross-referenced, each one footnoted with the names of humans who died as a result. The Council's translation array had never been recalibrated for a human voice before Alara spent 74 nights rewriting its code, line by line, in the dark, while her team slept in shifts. Petra had taught her the architecture. Eris had taught her the Tharn syntax. Sana had taught her which clauses to target. You want Section 19, Sana had said, and Section 22. Those are the ones they don't think about. Those are the ones they wrote for emergencies they never thought would happen. High Arbitrator Vexil's 3 amber vocal sacs had never flickered gray in 200 years of rulings. Gray was Tharn for blood draining from a face, for fear, for the moment when a predator realizes it has become prey. Today would be the first time. Alara opened a leather folder, actual earth leather, cowhide, tanned in Nebraska 9 years ago. The folder had belonged to her dissertation advisor, who died during the first Tharn bombardment. She had found it in the rubble. Inside, 47 pages, single-spaced, in 12 languages. Each page was a summary. The full dossier was 11,437 pages, but the summary was enough. The summary contained every name that mattered. She did not look at Vexil. She looked at the 12 tiers where the forgotten species sat. Representative Nix of the Vel, your world received 3 human medical convoys during the Xylian plague outbreak. 847 human doctors died on your soil. You were not invited to co-sponsor Partition Measure 9042. On the 7th tier, a small avian figure rose halfway from her seat. Feathers rustled. No words, just rising. The Vel had no military. They had no allies. They had 847 graves. Representative Tikala of the Morathi, humans rescued 1,204 of your children from the Tharn slave markets on Kessel 9. You paid nothing. You were not invited. From the 12th tier, a low chittering sound. The Morathi representative stood. Her fur was matted. She had not groomed since the vote was announced. The Dra's slave caste, freed by human evacuation ships 22 years ago. 2,319 of your dead carried in our holds. You were not invited. 7 Dra's representatives rose simultaneously, in perfect silence. Their bodies still carried the brands their former masters had burned into them. Alara had seen those brands in person, on children, on a girl named Tess who had died in her arms during the evacuation. Tess's name was on page 48. Vexil's amber sacs flickered, just once. The Kelvani delegation stopped laughing. There are 12 of you, Alara said quietly, and you all just received my translation of what Reservation Zone Z47 actually means. She did not say what it meant. She didn't have to. The Morathi knew. The Dras knew. The Vel knew. The Kith knew. Their 7 representatives stood with their fur on end, teeth bared. Reservation Zone Z47 was where the Tharn sent species they didn't want to see again. No resources, no food shipments, no medical aid, no communication relays, just silence and stone and the slow process of extinction. The Tharn had used Z47 11 times before. Each time the species sent their stop transmitting within 50 years. No survivors, no records, no names. They came, they struck, they vanished. Alara turned back to Vexil. Her head tilt was perfect, 7 degrees. She had practiced in the mirror until her neck hurt. Arbitrator, under Council Charter Section 19, Article 4, any coalition of 8 or more species may demand a full evidentiary hearing before any territorial partition. The 12 have spoken. You know this. Vexil's secondary eyelid flicked, a tell he had hidden for 200 years. She had spotted it in year 3 of her microexpression study. It happened when he was about to lie. The Council does not answer to. The Council answers to its charter, Alara said, not loud, not aggressive, just fact. She pulled one final page from her folder, page 48. The paper was warm from her hand. You can vote now, but before you do, I have 1,204 names on this page. They are the names of Morathi children. They are the names of 847 human doctors. They are the names of 2,319 slave caste Draws who died on human evacuation ships. They are the names of 11 species you betrayed before you came for mine. She placed the page on the podium. Not slammed, not thrown, placed. As if setting a plate at a dinner table. Then a voice Alara had been waiting for. A voice the galaxy had not heard in 800 years. Elder Quell of the Sylph rose from her seat. Her body was translucent. Starlight passed through her bones. She was 1,247 years old. She had watched empires rise and fall. She had watched species go extinct. She had never spoken in council session during Alara's lifetime. Her voice was a vibration more than a sound. It made the air itself shiver. It made Alara's teeth ache. The translator speaks truth. I have read her 47 pages. I have accessed human historical archives, unredacted, for the first time. She paused. The chamber held its breath. The holographic map above still showed Earth in crimson. The 847 empty seats still rose in concentric tiers. The cold still seeped through the crack in Alara's boot. No birds singing, no children laughing, no sounds of life at all. Do you know what humanity does when they are defeated? Quell asked. Her voice hardened. The starlight passing through her bones grew brighter. They do not beg, they do not break treaties, they build libraries. They vaccinate other species' children. They send doctors into plague zones. And then, she looked at Vexel. Her translucent eyes held no pity. They remember every name. For 400 years, for 1,000 years, they remember. War, total war. War without rules, without mercy, without end. I move to delay Partition Measure 9042 until a full evidentiary hearing is complete. Section 19, Article 4. The 12 have spoken. The 12 overlooked species rose, one by one. The Vel, the Morathi. The Kith, 7 representatives, their fur standing on end, teeth still bared. The Draws slave caste freed 22 years ago. 12 species. 47 ships between them, no military power to speak of. But they had procedural standing. Under Council Charter Section 22, Article 9, any measure challenged under Section 19 enters mandatory 90-day evidentiary review. The Tharn could not stop it. The 189 co-sponsors could not stop it. Alara had found the single procedural hairline crack, like the one in her boot, and poured 37 years of cold water into it. Vexel's amber sacks flickered gray. The blood drained from his face. The translation array hummed. The Kelvani delegation looked at each other. The 189 co-sponsors shifted in their seats. The vote never happened. Council Charter Section 22, Article 9. Any measure challenged under Section 19 enters mandatory 90-day evidentiary review. The Tharn could not stop it. The 189 co-sponsors could not stop it. The vote never happened. Alara stood at the lowered podium. Her palms were still flat on the cold obsidian. The holographic map above still showed Earth in crimson. The 847 empty seats still rose in concentric tiers. The cold was still seeping through the crack in her boot. The crack was wider now. She could feel the floor drinking warmth from her bones. High Arbitrator Vexel's amber sacks had gone completely gray, not flickering, just gray, dead, the color of ash, the color of a predator who had just realized it was standing in a trap. His secondary eyelid flickered without stopping. A muscle spasm he could not control. He opened his mouth to speak. Nothing came out, closed it, opened it again, still nothing. His hands gripped the edge of his dais. Knuckles white. The Tharn had no knuckles. They had jointed cartilage. It creaked under pressure. The Kelvani delegation had stopped laughing. The one who made the wet sound, a junior delegate, Alara had learned his name years ago. Kelvani's 4 was staring at his own hands. He had not known. None of them had known. The dossier was 11,437 pages. The 12 overlooked species had received the full summary. The 189 co-sponsors had received nothing. They had voted blind. They had voted on trust. The 189 co-sponsors shifted in their seats now like animals who had just realized the cage door was open. Some of them stood. Some of them sat back down. Some of them looked at Vexil with expressions Alara recognized from her 9 years of micro-expression study. Fear, confusion, the slow dawning horror of realizing you had signed something you did not understand. The slow dawning horror of realizing you had voted to erase a species that had saved your children. Elder Quell remained standing. Her translucent body glowed faintly in the projected starlight from the ceiling map. The light passed through her ribcage, through her heart. She did not have a heart anymore, not a physical one. She had outlived her own organs 400 years ago. She ran on memory now, on purpose. The council is adjourned, Quell said, not loud, just fact. Her voice was still a vibration. It made the obsidian floor hum. It made the 847 empty seats tremble slightly. The evidentiary hearing will begin in 90 standard days. The 12 will submit their full dossier. The Tharn Dominion will respond. The measure is suspended until then. She looked at Vexil. Her translucent eyes held no anger, no pity, just age, so much age. She had watched empires rise and fall. She had watched species go extinct. She had watched the Tharn Dominion grow from a minor military power into the galaxy's greatest threat. She had done nothing, until now. You may sit down, arbitrator. Vexil sat. His knees hit the edge of his dais. He did not seem to notice. His amber sac stayed gray. His eyelid kept flickering. His hands kept creaking. The chamber emptied in 11 minutes. Alara counted. She had nothing else to do with her hands. Her palms were still flat on the cold podium. The brass button under her thumb was still warm from her skin. She had pressed it 74 nights ago, recalibrated the array, rewritten the code. Petra had taught her how. The Tharn delegation left without a word. 7 of them, tall, gray-robed, amber sacks flat against their throats. They walked in single file. Their footsteps made no sound on the obsidian floor. They had practiced that, walking silently, moving through rooms where other species slept. They had learned that skill on Colony 3, on Colony 7, on Colony 12. The 189 co-sponsors filed out in clusters, not speaking to each other, not looking at each other. Some of them glanced back at Alara as they left. She met their eyes, one by one. She did not look away first, not once, not for 37 years. The Kelvani delegate who had laughed walked with his head down. His hands were shaking. He had laughed when she said there were 12 species who hadn't signed. He had laughed when she smiled. He was not laughing now. His breathing was wet. His lungs were designed for methane. He was hyperventilating in an oxygen atmosphere. No one helped him. The 12 overlooked species rose from their seats. The Vel, the Morathi, the Kith, the Draz, the others, they did not leave. They stood in silence, looking at her. Representative Nyx of the Vel, the small avian figure who had risen halfway from her seat, walked down the 7 tiers. Her feathers were gray-brown. Her eyes were black. Her beak was chipped. She stopped at the edge of the lowered podium. She had to look up to meet Alara's eyes. The podium was lowered 1.2 meters, a deliberate humiliation. Nyx did not seem to notice. You said 847 human doctors died on our soil, Nyx said. We did not know. You weren't supposed to, Alara said. The Tharn controlled your communication relays for 11 years after the plague. They filtered your incoming transmissions. You only received what they wanted you to receive. Nyx's feathers flattened against her body, a sign of grief in Vel physiology. Alara had learned that in year 2. We thought humanity abandoned us. We thought you left us to die. No, Alara said. We ran out of doctors. Representative Tikala of the Morathi walked down from the 12th tier. Her fur was matted. She had not groomed since the vote was announced. Her eyes were red. She had been crying. Morathi tears were thick, like syrup. They left tracks on her fur. 1,204 children, Tikala said. You said 1,204 children. Yes, Alara said. They were taken from Kessel 9, the slave markets. The Tharn took them. They said the children were being educated, rehabilitated, they said. They lied, Alara said. The children were sold to labor colonies. 1,204 were sold. 847 were recovered by human evacuation ships. The rest, she stopped. The rest, 357, did not survive the evacuation. Their names are on page 48. Tikala's fur bristled. Her teeth showed. Morathi teeth were flat, designed for grinding plants, but her jaw could crush bone. The Tharn will answer for this. Yes, Alara said, they will. 7 Draws representatives stood in a cluster. Their bodies still carried the brands their former masters had burned into them. The brands were on their arms, their necks, their faces. The Tharn had branded them like cattle, like furniture, like things that did not have names. The eldest Draz stepped forward. Her brand was on her forehead, a Tharn numeral. She had been property for 40 years before humans freed her. She had been 12 years old when she was taken. You said 2,319 of our dead, she said, carried in your holds. Yes, Alara said. I was on one of those ships, the evacuation of Kessel 9. I was in hold 7. The children were in hold 4. The ship took damage during launch. A Tharn plasma bolt. Hold 4 lost pressure. Alara nodded. She knew this. She had read the report 30 times. My daughter was in hold 4, the Draz said. Her name was Tess. She was 8 years old. She died 3 minutes before we cleared the atmosphere. Alara reached into her pocket, page 48. She unfolded it. The names were in small type, single-spaced, 6-point font. She ran her finger down the page. Stopped at line 1,204. Tess, Alara said. No family name, age 8, died in transit. Cause decompression. She is on this page. The Draws did not cry. Draws' tear ducts had been removed by their masters. They could not cry, but her voice cracked. Thank you. Don't thank me, Alara said. Thank the people who kept her name, who wrote it down, who refused to forget. Elder Quell descended from her tear. She did not walk. Sylph did not walk. They floated. Their bodies were mostly hollow, filled with gas lighter than air. She drifted down like a leaf, like a ghost, like the oldest thing in the room. The 12 have spoken, Quell said. Section 19, Article 4 is invoked. The evidentiary hearing will begin in 90 days. But I must ask you, Translator, what will you do with those 90 days? Alara turned to face her. The photograph was warm against her chest. The mug was warm in her coat. The cold was still seeping through her boot. She did not care. We're going to read the names, Alara said. All 1.2 million humans who died in Tharn observation incidents. All 847 doctors who died on Vel soil. All 2,319 Draws who died on our ships. Every name we have. Every name we could verify. Every name we could find. She held up page 48. This is one page. There are 1,204 names on this page. It took 6 years to verify them. 6 years of cross-referencing. 6 years of matching Tharn military records with human evacuation logs with Draws' oral histories. 6 years of finding bodies that were never meant to be found. She folded the page carefully, placed it back in her folder. Then we're going to file 1,892 individual war crimes charges, one for every violation in our dossier. Each charge will include names, dates, locations, witness statements, autopsy reports, photographs, video footage, audio recordings. We have all of it. We've had it for years. We were just waiting for the right moment. 1,892 charges, Quell said. That will take years to adjudicate. We have years. And after that, Alara looked at the distant star where Colony 3 used to be. The star was still there, still burning, still fusing hydrogen into helium, still doing what stars do. It did not care that its planet was gone. It did not care that 11.2 billion people were about to be relocated. It did not care about anything. The light from Colony 3's sun took 4.3 years to reach the observation dome. The planet was gone, destroyed 11 years ago, but the light was still traveling, still carrying the image of a world that no longer existed. The beach was in that light somewhere. Aisha was in that light somewhere. Myra and Kale, running toward the water, laughing. Myra had drawn the water afterward, said it looked like diamonds. After that, Elder, we build another library. We vaccinate another species' children. We send doctors into another plague zone. We show up. That's what we do. That's what we've always done. She pulled the chipped mug from her coat. The ceramic was warm from her body heat. She had no hot water. She had no tea. She held it anyway. That's what we are. Not warriors, not victims. The people who remember. The people who show up. The people who, when the galaxy votes to erase us, translate their laws back at them until they choke on the words. She lifted the mug, pretended to drink. The gesture was 37 years old. She had done it every morning since Colony 3 fell. Every morning, even when there was no tea, even when there was no water, even when there was nothing left but the memory of Jasmine. The Tharn wanted us gone. They wanted our colonies, our resources, our worlds. But they didn't understand what we were building while they were watching. They saw our ships, our weapons, our military readiness. They didn't see the translation array Petra built with components smaller than her thumb. They didn't see the legislative codex Aris cracked while they slept. They didn't see the procedural vulnerabilities Sana mapped on napkins. She set the mug down on the observation dome's floor. The ceramic clicked against the alloy, a small sound, insignificant. The sound of one person putting down a cup. They saw what they wanted to see, a weak species, a young species, a species that didn't know how the galaxy worked, and they were right, we didn't know. So we learned. We learned their language, their laws, their tells, their fears. We learned everything they didn't want us to know. She looked at Quell. The Elder's translucent body glowed brighter. The starlight passed through her like light through water. And when we had learned enough, we came here. With 47 pages, with 12 species they forgot to invite, with one procedural hairline crack. She pointed at her boot, the crack in the sole, like the one I've been ignoring for 11 days. Small, easy to miss, but when you pour 37 years of cold water into it, it breaks. The observation dome was quiet. The stars turned slowly beyond the transparent walls. Somewhere out there, the Tharn Dominion was already planning their response. Somewhere out there, the 189 co-sponsors were already checking their own charters. Somewhere out there, 4.3 light-years away, her team was watching the delayed feed. Aris was probably still awake, still not sleeping, still drinking coffee that looked like crude oil. His eyes still had that red ring. He had not slept more than 4 hours in 11 years. He said sleep was for people who had already won. Sana was probably reorganizing the napkins, adding new footnotes, new vulnerabilities, new charter sections the Tharn had forgotten about. She had found 14 so far. She was looking for number 15. Marcus was probably reciting names, 14,000 of them, in order. He did it when he couldn't sleep, when the silence got too loud. He said the names were louder than the silence. Petra was probably typing, fast, her fingers moving like insects, never speaking above a whisper. Her vocal cords were damaged. She could speak. She chose not to. She said whispers were for secrets. Typing was for truth. Jinho was probably reading poetry. The woman who died 200 years ago. The poems about hope, about endurance, about the small things people do when no one is watching. He said the poems reminded him why nonviolence worked, why empires fell, why libraries mattered more than weapons. That is terrifying, Quell said finally. What you are, what you have become, what you have built in silence for 37 years. Ilara picked up the chipped mug, held it in both hands, looked at the crack in the ceramic. The epoxy had yellowed over the years. Her grandmother had fixed it poorly, but it held. It had always held. No, she said, that's human. She looked at the photograph one more time. Aisha, Myra, Kale, the beach, the water that looked like diamonds. The light from Colony 3 is still traveling, she said. It will take 4.3 more years to reach the nearest inhabited world. When it arrives, it will show a beach, a woman, 2 children, water that looks like diamonds. Quell said nothing. The stars turned, and somewhere out there someone will see it, and they'll wonder what happened to that world, and they'll look it up, and they'll find the dossier, and they'll read the names, and they'll remember. She put the photograph back in her breast pocket, next to her heart, where it had been for 37 years. And they'll keep going, because that's what we do. We show up. We remember, we build libraries, we vaccinate children, we send doctors into plague zones. She drank from the empty mug. No, that's human.